In honor of Big 12 Media Days, we here at Crain and Company are going to rank our top 5 quarterbacks from best to worst in the Big 12. Now, while there are a couple of legitimate candidates to be number 1 overall, I've got to go with Shadur Sanders, and for a reason that might surprise some. Now, he's most likely going to be most people's number 1 because of his ability to make all the throws, his nuance as a passer, and his Houdini-like escapability inside and outside of the pocket. And all of that is true. But to me, one additive and something that sets him apart in aggregate from the rest is his overall toughness. I'm not saying the other guys aren't tough, but he sure as hell is. And you did hear that right. Now, I get that he's big into fashion. He even went to Milan for Fashion Week, and some people may think that makes him a little soft, but the tape doesn't lie. I've been watching it again all day today. Last year, he was the most sacked quarterback in the FBS. He got sacked over 10% of his dropbacks when he was passing. Now, the average in FBS is just over 6%, yet he still completed almost 70% of his passes. He threw for over 3,200 yards and had an incredible 27-3 touchdown to interception ratio. Now, what else stands out to me, however, despite being under more pressure than a dyslexic at a spelling bee, is that he stayed in the pocket and would deliver the pill while getting hit so many times I couldn't even count them after a while. And nothing fires up a team more in the film room than watching their star quarterback take one in the teeth while delivering a pass and putting his body and future on the line over and over and over again. In fact, one of the first things that coaches look at when they're recruiting a QB is to see if they're man enough to bite the bullet just to get the ball off. It's a measurement of toughness at the position. Now, do I like the way he leads sometimes off the field, like on social media? I don't. And yes, Colorado's garnered a ton of haters for how they go about their business. But if there's one thing that you cannot question about Shadur after watching the film, it is his toughness. Now, do I believe Colorado's going to have some magical breakout year and go on some crazy run? I don't personally, but I would take Shadur as my QB1 in a second because men lie, women lie, but the tape doesn't lie. I'm going to bring in a guy who knows a little bit about playing quarterback, former Michigan quarterback David Cohn, my brother, former Western Colorado wide receiver. And David, I want people to understand when we put these rankings up, this isn't the best quarterback on the best team. Mm-hmm. This has nothing to do with the team around them. It is if you're putting a team together from scratch, who would be the first quarterback that you would take out of the Big 12? And when you look at kind of the narrative around Shadur, we know he can deliver the ball. We've watched him make the big-time throws. And he didn't have a lot of help up front. I mentioned that. But there are many times and many examples of him sitting in the pocket and taking the hit and getting the ball off and delivering it. And to me, that's what I need to see.
No doubt, man. He's very talented. Obviously, there's a lot of hype because of his last name, but that shouldn't deter people from what he actually is able to do on the football field. Can you bring up my top 5 list here? So, like you said, I didn't make my list based off who's the best player on the best team. I also didn't take into consideration who will be the best pro, even though we can talk about that a little bit. For my top spot, though, I went Cam Rising.
Not a bad
Cam Rising, 2-time Big 12 champ, or Pac-12 champ, but 2-time conference champ. Now, will Cam Rising be the same football player that he was prior to this ACL tear in the Rose Bowl at the end of 2023? I don't know. None of us knows that for sure. I think we will be able to see fairly quickly, though, in the season, how he's able to bounce back. You know, one of the reasons that I have him at the top is not just his ability to deliver the football through the air. I think he has better arm strength than anyone else that I have on this list, but also the running ability. When you get him in the RPO game or when the pocket breaks down, he's rushed for almost 500 yards in both of those seasons where Utah won the conference and went to the Rose Bowl. That's why I have him at the top of my list. I hope he comes back healthy. Will he be the best professional quarterback on this list? Probably not. That's where it gets to 2 and 3 for me. Shadur Sanders and Noah Fafita for Arizona. It was like splitting hairs, man. When I went back and rewatched all the tape today. Very, very similar. I'm so bullish on Noah Fafita, even with Jed Fish leaving as the head coach in Arizona. A couple of things, very quick twitch in the pocket, more quick twitch in the pocket than Shadur Sanders is. I think his release is also quicker. I think Shadur Sanders has better arm strength. And like you said, he threw the ball over 430 times a year ago. The touchdown to interception ratio being, 27-3 with, almost 70%, 69% completion percentage is really impressive. And he has a little bit better size. So that's why I went Shadur Sanders at 2, Noah Fafita at 3. Rocco Beck, guys, at Iowa State. This may be, a lot of people may think I'm crazy having this kid at 4, but he's the offensive Big 12 player of the year, the freshman of the year coming in from the conference. And just listen to some of these stats here. He threw for 3,100 yards. This is his redshirt freshman year. 23 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 63% completion percentage. All the talent in the world. He may end up being the best pro on the list if you watch the way that he delivers the football. Very similar stats to another young Iowa State quarterback, who is starting for the San Francisco 49ers and playing
Dirty Brock
Super Bowl,
Purdy.
Brock Purdy. And then 5th on the list for me, Garrett Green, I think, at West Virginia, the definition of a gunslinger.
Sure.
Completion percentage not quite as high as these other guys. Touchdown to interception ratio is probably not going to blow you out of the water, but just an absolute gamer. I just love watching him play. I have him 5th on the list, which means there was no room for who I think is the most dynamic quarterback, Jalen Daniels, who I think Blain's going to get to, but just the injuries.
Yeah. And, well, the thing about it too is, all these guys are gamers. Like, they're gamers. Again, you look at Fafita, you look at Rocco Beck, what he did last year, and kind of turning Iowa State around. Don't forget, Iowa State starting quarterback was suspended for the whole year for a gambling situation. So he came in there. I remember that story with his dad in the stands, getting emotional when everybody's chanting, his name, Rocco, Rocco, Rocco. And then Garrett Green, Blain, saved Neil Brown's job. I do want to make one caveat before we go to your list and then get to mine. I'm not saying that Shadur Sanders is tougher than all of these guys. I am saying that I think Shadur Sanders is the best passer, the most natural passer, the best when it comes to extending the play inside and outside the pocket, and he can run, and that toughness element puts it over the top. Because if I thought he was a soft ass, I wouldn't have him on this list. If I thought he was, pretty boy Malloy and just wanted to look cute, because we know a lot of quarterbacks like that. They want to look good on Instagram. They're going to look good throwing 7-on-7, but they get in the game and people start running at them, and it changes. They turn into the fat goalie off the big green that just sees like the werewolves running at him every time.
I love when we bring up Jared Stidham on the show. That's always great. Let's go ahead and bring up my list. Number 1, I have Jalen Daniels. Jalen Daniels is not a thinker, all right? Jalen Daniels is a driver. That's what he does. And I know he's injured, and he's had 6.5 games he's averaged each season, but he's played 9 games. I think he's the best runner as a quarterback in the Big 12. You see what this kid can be. I watched him throw for over 500 passing yards against Arkansas and score 3 rushing touchdowns. If this kid can stay healthy, I think with this Kansas team and what they're bringing back, they have a legitimate shot for the Big 12 championship. If he can stay healthy, and that's a huge thing to say. Same thing about Cam Rising, who tore his ACL last year.
Well, you can say the same about every
quarterback. I watched Michael Penix now play for 3 years because his body was falling
Quinn
apart.
Ewers.
And he's going to play for the Falcons probably this year.
Yeah.
So
Tua Tagovailoa.
I'm telling you, this kid is special. He has that it factor, so that's why he's my number 1. And number 2, Shadur, I think the most pro-ready. I believe that. But I will say this about Shadur. I know he's taken probably 30 sacks last year, but half of them was his fault.
Really?
Throw the football. You can't sit in the pocket forever. And another positive for him with that is that he didn't turn the ball over a lot when he did get sacked. I will give him that, but he did get hit for something. He's worried about his incompletion percentage. All right? That's what it came out. So he took half those sacks. I think if you looked at numbers, half his sacks were 4 seconds plus.
Well, and look, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you that he probably should get the ball out quicker. But I also don't think you can look at me and watch Colorado's offensive line and say, you know what, this guy can talk about this in the same way that I can talk about what Utah had on the offensive line or what Arizona even had on the offensive line. And everybody's worried about their completion percentage. I don't think he's the first quarterback to ever worry about that. But it's hard for me to sit here and say, oh, he just worries about his completion percentage when it's at 70% and he threw 3 interceptions. So if it was just trying to get rid of the ball, regardless, it's not like you get points for the defense intercepting a pass that goes toward your completion percentage. I don't care. 10-point getting sacked on over 10% of your drop back passes is an insane number, regardless of how long you hold onto the ball. But think about what his completion percentage would be is if every time somebody tried to bring pressure, they were able to hold up at some point for Colorado, or you had a run game that down the stretch ended up being what it was at the beginning of the year. Yeah. So I think
Two things can be true at once,
they
right?
kind of balance each other out.
I agree with that. And 3, Cam Rising, I agree. I can't wait to see from a running standpoint what he's able to do this year because Cam Rising is a underrated runner. Mm-hmm. Cam Rising has the feel to know when to run, and that comes from veteran leadership. I know his 5th year. Probably in 7th year. Who knows how long he's been in college.
7th year, because Kyle Whittingham said he can't play in 8th year.
Yeah.
They found out he wasn't eligible.
Number 4, Noah Fafita, extremely good talent. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. I want to see what it looks like with the new head coach. And number 5, I believe KJ Jefferson.
I'm with you on that.
If you look at who KJ is, I know he's not the best thrower of the ball. First of all, he's an absolute tree. He's a giant. He's a phenomenal runner. He's a veteran. He knows what he's looking at, and his passing is only getting better. So I think UCF is building something special on that offense. But if we look at UCF, as always, the defense is the problem. But KJ has grown as a passer. Each year, he's gotten better and better, and I think he's going to do better than actually what he did at Arkansas
I agree.
than he'll do at UCF. So don't sleep on KJ Jefferson. I think he's going to make some waves in this league.
All right, let's put my list up. Here's what I got. I got Shadur number 1. Obviously, you saw the top of the show. I got Cam Rising number 2. I don't think it's crazy to put Cam Rising number 1. What I am interested to see with some of these guys that have gotten hurt, and I think you can throw KJ Jefferson in this mix too, even though he's in Gus Malzahn's system, is how much are they going to, is that in the back of their mind of the coach saying, hey, we don't need you to take off as much, you got to stay healthy, going to inhibit their ability to be as efficient as possible. That's what I'm interested to see. I got Jalen Daniels at number 3. Again, we can talk about quarterbacks, you can't get hurt. Well, no starting quarterback can really get hurt and anybody can get away with it. Then Noah Fafita, I think maybe one of the most underrated quarterbacks in college football going into this year. He's still not a household name when you talk to just casual college football fans, but I think that he's going to start being a household name.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Why do you think Noah Fafita didn't leave Arizona?
Why?
Transfer. Why do you think he didn't transfer?
With Jed Fish?
Yeah.
Well, again, I think it's typically multiple things, but if you look at Washington, who they brought in through the transfer portal, I think they got Will Rogers that transferred to Washington through the portal. I think he's probably happy at Arizona. McMillan's coming back, his top wide receiver. They did lose Singer, who's a hell of a player. But I don't know. So some guys just don't want to leave when they've already kind of established what they've established. And I'm sure that he's talked to the new coach, the guy from San Jose State, and he feels good about it. Plus, I mean, you've got solid ground to stand on now at Arizona if you're Noah Fafita. And Arizona's not a laughingstock. The fact that we have a quarterback from Kansas and Arizona in the top 5 of the Big 12 just shows you how far they've come. But KJ Jefferson, to me, is the one that if you haven't watched this guy a lot because Arkansas has been bad, if you look at how he's going to fit into that system with Gus Malzahn and what he has accomplished and how really deadly of a runner in a different way and a decent enough passer to get away with it, I think KJ Jefferson may really blossom this year. Not only that, they returned their stud running back, who ran for over 1,400 yards. They brought in another stud running back from Toledo, who ran for over 1,400 yards. Kobe Hudson's back, their top wide receiver, who's just behind Javon Baker, who's now in the NFL. And that offensive line should be good enough. In this system, it is an absolute perfect fit. I think KJ Jefferson could have a breakout year. So I got Shadur 1, Cam Rising 2, Jalen Daniels 3, Noah Fafita 4, KJ Jefferson 5. We want to know what you think. We're going to open up the phone lines, 2:45 p.m. Central. It's 1-855-236-3228. Going to get to the chat in a second. But I do want to hit a couple other guys quickly that we don't have here that people are going to be like, what? Mm-hmm. Avery Johnson from Kansas State. Here's why, at least I don't, and y'all speak for yourself. I haven't seen enough from him compared to the other guys to sit here and say that I think he is a top 5 quarterback in the Big 12. I haven't seen him throw enough. Like he went 14 for 31 against NC State in the bowl game. I'm not saying he's a terrible thrower, but it's like asking me to go perform open heart surgery and I don't even know what's wrong with the patient really, what I'm even looking for. So until I see that, and listen, I would take him over Alan Bowman from Oklahoma State, even though I know what Alan Bowman is, because I think he's going to be a better player, but I can't put him above these guys because I haven't seen enough yet. And people will complain about that and say, oh, but I'm not going to sit here and just guess about a guy that's got to prove it to me from a throwing standpoint for me to know whether he can do it or that he can't do it. And there's some other guys on our top 5 that you can make
Bowman's
a
an interesting look. Because
he
didn't start till when? Week 4, week 5. I'm pretty sure he led the Big 12 in passing. I mean, the touchdown to interception ratio, 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Obviously, that's not good enough, but you just heard Ollie Gordon will play every game this year. Yeah. He's going to be the quarterback starting week 1. So I think Bowman could come out and actually surprise some people if he gets those turnover ratios.
Well, here's where I disagree with you. Last year, the run game was so good for Oklahoma State that Bowman, I feel like you had guys running more open than they will ever be. Now the book is out on who Oklahoma State is because Ollie Gordon didn't touch the ball till week 3, week 4, something like that last year. So what happens, all right, if the run gets stopped, if you load up to stop the run, and yes, you got to rob Peter to pay Paul to do that most time. You got to bring more guys in the box. I don't think Bowman can consistently make the throws when he's under pressure to be in the top 5 at this point. I mean, he's played 7 years of college football. I mean, again, I can't sit here on one hand and say, well, I don't believe DJU can make the routine throws routine, but damn it, Alan Bowman can do it in year 8. So I'm not saying he's a bad player, but you're a one-trick pony. That's who Oklahoma State is. All right, and it's Ollie Gordon, and it's a hell of a trick. But again, the book is out. We talk about this in baseball all the time. Those young pitchers that come up, and the first 2 games, they're just shoving it. And you're like, oh my God, we got the greatest pitcher of all time. Then the next 3 or 4 starts, they get shelled because the book's out on them. I just don't feel like Bowman will have a better opportunity or have guys running more wide open this year than he did last year when he threw 14 interceptions.
Well, or the attempts, right? Like, I mean, if you're leaning on the run game that heavily, I don't think he's going to. I mean, Shadur Sanders, Colorado needed Shadur Sanders to throw the ball 430 times. Had to give him a lot of opportunities. Very similar to J.J. McCarthy last year at Michigan, right? Like, I'm not comparing him to Bowman in terms of their playmaking ability, but Michigan ran the ball so much that it was a lot of people were saying, hey, J.J. McCarthy's not given the opportunity to throw the football 35 times a game the way that maybe a Michael Penix Jr. is. But there's so many good quarterbacks in the Big 12. I think all of our postseason lists will be different than our preseason lists. I mean, if you look at the DeQuan Finn kid who's going to Baylor.
I almost snuck him in
there. The MAC player of the year a year ago at Toledo. I mean, and Donovan Smith, there's a bunch of guys who could sneak up in the top 5 list after this season is complete. One thing on Jalen Daniels, I don't think you're crazy at all for having him at the top of your list. I fully admit I think he's the most dynamic quarterback in the conference. Serious Jaden Daniels vibes, Cam Ward type, Lamar Jackson type vibes for sure. I don't think we can compare his injury history to some of the other guys, though.
Yeah, I agree.
4 years at Kansas, hasn't completed more than 9 games, whereas at least when you talk about like the Michael Penix Jr.'s of the world or Cam Rising or even say Dylan Gabriel, at least you have multiple year sample sizes of complete years, right? I mean, you're talking about guys who've thrown for like 13,000 yards in some of those instances. But if he stays healthy this entire year, I don't think you're crazy at all to sprinkle a little Heisman, betting
for
future,
sure.
or even Kansas winning the conference betting future.
Yeah, and again, it's just wild. We're talking about Kansas and Arizona competing to win the conference. And I do, before we get to the chat, want to make sure everybody understands, we are not saying the best quarterback on the best team. Right? If we were doing that, I would have put Cam Rising number 1 because of what I think about Utah. And look, we haven't even talked about Baron Morton from Texas Tech either. Like, Baron Morton tore it apart last year. He's a guy that I think could really, really rise. We're going to put out our full rankings from all 16 teams. The Big 12 has 16 teams, but it's not the best quarterback on the best team. This is starting a team from scratch. Which quarterback of the Big 12 would you look at and say, I want this guy first, I want this guy second, I want this guy third, I want this guy fourth, I want this guy fifth? So, because again, on social media, it'll be misconstrued 1,000 times. YouTube, let's pop and appreciate you guys stopping by. If you get a chance, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Please keep sharing the show. Hit that like button. Keep commenting. We love all the action we're getting with you guys, and we hope it continues. Thank you.